going, guys? Welcome back to Jason Unleashed. Jason Carter here, your host. Of course, you're on my Instagram. Happy Monday, you guys. Welcome to a new week. Hope your weekend was great, and it's good to see you. Good to be here with you guys today. Also, what's really good is my guest. He is a four-time Emmy-winning host and journalist that is a jack of all freaking trades. He's my boy, CHRIS Van VLIET, wrestling aficionado, sports aficionado, and he's here today on Jason Unleashed. So let's get to it and bring him in. Going live with VLIET. That's a Dutch last name. Van something is a Dutch last name. Did you guys see The Sound of Music? Dutch Van, Von Dutch Van, I think. Anyways, am I wrong, Chris? Van VLIET is Dutch, right?
It's Dutch, like many, many generations ago. I just claim Canada now.
Oh, yeah, don't you know? CHRIS Van VLIET, welcome to the show, man. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much. How is Miami treating you?
Okay, so it's good, but the weather, no. It's great. The weather's great. The humidity's great. People can't drive for shit. However, I'm enjoying myself. But with that said, how's the West Coast treating you? Because you're freshly minted in Los Angeles.
I'm loving it. And the weather here is amazing. The weather's good. People also can't drive here, but this is great. You know, we got oceans and the mountains here.
Right. Well, you're an athletic man. So California is sportsman's paradise. But good to see you. Welcome to the show, Chris. You being Canadian, let's talk about that. I'm obsessed with Canadians. One, I've never been to Canada. I've always wanted to go to Canada. Every trip I was going to go to Canada, I was going to take to Canada, always got canceled and COVID happened. But you're from Pinkerling, Ontario, right?
Yeah, so just outside of Toronto, Pickering, Ontario, born and raised. My parents still live in the same house that I grew up in. I have such a giant place in my heart for Canada, and I'm not sorry about that at all.
Dude, I was going to say, when am I going to get the accent? Because every time I've talked to you, Chris, it's like many, many years of training has removed it from your vocal existence, and there it is, and in all its full glory. But yeah, man, Canadians are great, and I'm still hoping to take a trip to Canada. But man, let's talk about you, because you're killing the game. But before you started killing the game, you were also killing the game back in Canada. Four-time Emmy-winning host, right? Have not only talked about sports entertainment, but you've done hard news. I mean, you're just, like I said, this jack of all trades. When did you get bit by the journalism bug, or were you always just a chatty kid growing up, and this is how it manifested itself?
Yeah, like 4 years old, I think is where it dates like all the way back to. We had a Fisher-Price radio, and I recorded on tapes, which you and I are familiar with, but not everybody would be familiar with a cassette tape. And right. I would pretend to be a radio host, and that's where it all began. And we had a class in high school, communication studies. We went out and like made a news broadcast every single day. And I just loved the fact that we could be creative. And I always loved presenting. I was the vice president of my student council. I did the morning announcements. I hosted the talent show, hosted the fashion show. School was so great. When it came time to pick a college major, I'm like, well, communication studies, that sounds good. I'll go do that. And I had like this, I loved college, but I had this epiphany in my final year of college.
Ooh, epiphanies.
Where I woke up one day. Yes, the aha moment. And it hit me that like when we graduated, we were going to have to work for the next 40, 50 years of our life. And
True
I just
story.
in that moment decided like if we were going to have to work, I wanted to not hate my job. And that is where it really began for me. I wanted to have a job that I didn't hate. I didn't want to be one of those people. It's Monday today as we have this conversation. I didn't want to be one of those people who hated going to work on Monday.
Yeah.
And that's where this whole process began.
So in Canada, Fisher-Price started it all. By the way, Sharon says, so many careers started with Fisher-Price. I had a Fisher-Price Mr. Microphone growing up, so I co-signed that 100%. But you got your start in radio. You started on the air in radio, which a lot of on-camera talents do, myself included. What format, and would you ever return to radio?
So I started at an AM radio news station, and this is how it went. Okay, after that epiphany, I reached out to every TV station, every radio station in my college town, and basically said, "Look, I'm a communications major. I love this. Can I come in and see how it's done in the real world?" And one FM station said, "Yeah, come be on our street team." There was a community-run TV station, Rogers Community 20. they said, yeah, come in, you could be a volunteer. And I did everything. I was floor director, audio, VTR, everything. And this radio station, AM 570 News, said, we don't take on volunteers. It's not really something we do. How would you like a job as a board operator? I'm like, sure. It only pays $8 an hour. I'm like, well, that's $8 more than I was expecting to make. And just like that, I was in, and I was a board operator, which basically means you're running the soundboard.
Yeah.
And when my shifts were over, I would go into the recording booth and like just make demo reels. I was making like these radio demo reels, and that's where it all began. And I've worked in radio off and on. When I was in Cleveland, I hosted a radio show there for a few years. I love it. But I also love now that like you can have a podcast. You can literally sit where you are, and you can have a podcast and do whatever you want, whatever format you want, and you call the shots. So you don't have to be like, you don't have to be tied down by like what the radio station wants you to do or say.
I love that too. And much like yourself, when I got into radio, it was someone just busting through a door and saying, hey, do you want to be on the radio? Like, you're hanging around a radio station. You know what you want to do. You find a way to finagle your way into the room, right? Because it's always about getting behind the velvet rope, getting into the room. And then that one person's like, sure, kid, I'll take a chance on you, which starts you on this cool journey to ultimately create this amazing career. And you're so right about the podcast. You have been doing a lot in quarantine. How has quarantine been for you as far as beyond work? How has Chris kept busy in quarantine? Because some people have some really jacked up stories and some really awesome stories.
Well, I heard someone refer to this as the great pause. And I'm like, that is so good. Like that's exactly what we've done. We've had a chance to pause, reevaluate what's important in our personal lives, reevaluate what's important in our professional lives.
Right.
I miss more than anything, though, going to the gym. And when I moved down here, I moved down to LA about a month and a half ago. I'm like, oh, as long as the gym's open, I'm good. Literally the day I got here, the gym closed. So I'll tell you, lifting the 5-gallon jugs of water and doing push-ups doesn't work as well for me as being able to go to the gym. But this has been great, man. I've been so fortunate over the last almost year to really dial into my YouTube channel, really dial into my podcast. And now it's like, I love doing interviews in person, but now it's like perfectly acceptable to send someone a Zoom link, send someone a Skype link, and hit record. So it's been great for me.
Well, isn't it so funny how I don't want to say lack of professionalism that goes into being like, to doing what we're doing is like cool now. It's acceptable. You busted your ass to be so professional with like making sure it's all beautiful. Now it's just like, do you want a link of me in my living room? I can get you that anytime you need. But your show, let's talk about the brand that you've been able to build and why it's so important for you to bet on yourself and invest in yourself and create for yourself. Because the Chris Van Vliet Show, you have like close to 300,000 followers on YouTube. You have close to 1 million views, man. Like some of the best interviews with people in the business. Wrestling is your thing. I also grew up watching wrestling, but I didn't get into it as much as you did. But why wrestling, Chris? What happened? What in your life said wrestling was it for you?
I wanted to be a pro wrestler. So growing up, like I was on the amateur wrestling team. I was on the high school wrestling team. This was my thing. Grew up when like Stone Cold Steve Austin and Vince McMahon were having their big feud. And I was like, I want to do that. And I'm a very big believer in if somebody else is doing the thing that you want to do, that just means that you can do it too. So I was a backyard wrestler. I'm sure you've seen the terrible YouTube videos of people getting injured, like jumping off of trampolines and jumping off the roof. We did that on like a smaller scale with like slightly less injuries, although one of my buddies broke his leg twice. But I wanted to do this, and this was what I was into. So when I was in college, I'm like, I'm gonna save up my money to buy a car, and then when I have a car, I can drive myself to wrestling school. And during the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I went to wrestling school, learned how to do it, was learning how to fall correctly and run the ropes. And then I kind of had to, like, I came to this crossroads. What's more important to me? Going to school or going to wrestling school? Because you couldn't do both. It was 4 days a week. It was a lot of money. And I decided I'll finish with my communication studies degree. Wrestling will always be there. And I'm very fortunate that I still am able to dip my toe into the wrestling world, doing some interviews, a ring announcer every once in a while. Look, I'm passionate about the things I'm passionate about. And when I
Sure.
love the things that I love, I dive like all the way in. So I got some weird interests, bass fishing and pro wrestling. And
I know.
if I can make those a career, then whatever it is that anybody's passionate about, you can make that a career for you.
The gospel, man. The word. True, true. How do you feel, Chris, though, about the people say wrestling is very performative, right? I mean, we came up in a time where you had Andre the Giant, Macho Man Savage, Hulk, the Hulk, you name it. In a time where wrestling was still reality TV wasn't a thing, right? You didn't have
Yeah.
the lens of reality TV because people look at wrestling as a form of reality television, believe it or not. So with the way the industry has changed in regards to wrestling and something that you've covered and you've been a part that's been a major part of your life your whole life, how do you view the industry now? I mean, you've interviewed who's who in the ring. You've seen the changes. What do you think?
Well, I think they peeled the curtain back certainly over the last 20-ish years. Like when someone says wrestling's fake now, we always kind of go, yeah, of course, it's a TV show. What's so interesting about this, though, is most TV shows are fake. Like if you said, I'm a huge Grey's Anatomy fan, I wouldn't go,
I am.
Okay. Well, Jason, they're not really doctors, right? Like, it's fake, right?
Yeah, but still, don't ruin this. Don't ruin it for me, though.
I'm just saying, I get that,
Right.
like, the element of pro wrestling is it's live, it's happening, boom, it's happening, and when mistakes happen, they happen. Same with live theater. But nobody leaves, like, the 2 o'clock showing of Hamilton and goes, great story, but that guy's not actually Alexander Hamilton in there. Like, he died hundreds of years ago.
Right, but you're right though. I mean, look, we told, of course, Chris, audiences get the. I don't want to say I hate using the word performative because it's very performative, but I will say though, back in the day, wrestling there was a mystique behind it, right? And then you had glow. It seemed like it was more respected as a sport versus it being a form of entertainment that is like not real, so it's just interesting how reality TV and pop culture has allowed that to happen.
Well, without diving like too much into the history here, pro wrestling started as like a promoter going, we're going to take this big, strong looking guy, put him in a match with this big, strong looking guy, and I'm going to pay this guy to lose the match. That's where pro wrestling started as. So it started as this element of like it being real. Like people thought they were actual matches. And then, at the end, years later, we found out, oh, this guy was just being paid to lose. And that's what it ended up turning into.
Right. Well, isn't that what boxing matches are nowadays, too? Someone getting paid to lose?
Oh, wow.
Shade! Shots fired! But Chris, you built this brand. And you've really taken things into your own hands. Why was it important for you to, like I say, bet on yourself and create for yourself?
I just thought it was so important to, like, dream the biggest possible dream that I could possibly dream. A lot of dreams impossible there. So, I had an amazing job. I've had amazing jobs throughout my entire career, and it's caused me to live in some amazing cities. Peterborough, Ontario, to Vancouver, to Toronto, to Cleveland, to Miami. I worked in all of these cities, and I just got to a point where I'm like, I want to do something more. I don't want to look back at my life when I'm 65 and retired. Although I think by the time I'm 65, I'll be like, oh, let's work for another 30 years. But I don't want to look back and go, what could I have done? Like, did I really go as hard as I wanted to go? And that was it. I wanted to bet on myself. And I think that that's the absolute best bet that you can always make.
Right. I would agree. So many people are watching right here. Jay Gautier Jr. says, my dude, Big Pro Brian, who's a fan of yours, loves you, says, can Chris give a definitive answer for his Mount Rushmore of pro wrestlers?
I can, and I will. So it's Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan. I think that they should be on everybody's Mount Rushmore.
Right.
And then because I grew up in like the late 90s Attitude Era, that was my favorite. I'm going to go Undertaker in my number 3 spot. And then I think it's tough for number 4 because I've got a toss-up here between Rock and Austin, but I honestly think that Rock has done so much more with his life since wrestling, where Austin like really made the Attitude Era what it was. So there we go. It's Hogan, it's Flair, it's Undertaker, and it's Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Steve Austin. I don't consider Rock a pro wrestler, CVV. I don't. Like, I know he was, but like, because as you said, he has exponentially grown his career beyond. It's like, I don't know, let's say you're a backup dancer. Jennifer Lopez, great example, was a backup dancer, and now she's Jennifer fucking Lopez. You don't look back, you don't think of her, like, unless she talks about it in like conversation, no one says, oh, she was a fly girl on A Living Color. No, you say that's Jennifer Lopez, right? She was a Janet backup dancer. No, bro, that's Jennifer Lopez. So same thing with The Rock. But you mentioned that you've lived in some incredible cities. You worked. I mean, you here in Miami, you were on Deco Drive, which is an institution here in Miami, and you've moved on to do some great things. But with great success, there's also some failures in your career. What has been your uphill battles and your struggles that you've had to overcome to become the talent you are? We all have them. Some people don't like to talk about them because some of them really suck. But for yourself, what calls to mind a time when you're like, damn, is this the right move?
Oh man, it's been my entire career. Like, I don't feel like I've ever been the first choice for any job that I've ever been up for. And here's a perfect example. So my very first job, I was an intern at a small station in Peterborough, Ontario, Chex TV. Internship turned into a job, and I was like, I don't want to be a news reporter for like the rest of my life. And I was one man banding it there, like writing, shooting, reporting, everything. And I applied for this job in Vancouver, MTV2 Canada, a show called 969, and I sent them my stuff, didn't hear back from them. And this was such a journey to even get in the door to have them consider me. So I knew the name of the person who was doing the hiring. I called the TV station and asked for her by name. So I called the front desk. Hi, is so-and-so there? One moment, please. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is gonna actually work. She picks up the phone. I introduce myself. I just sent you my stuff. I would love to have you take a look at it. Yeah, we'll get back to you.
Right, of course.
Send me an email later. Thank you for the phone call. We'll be looking at stuff. In her email signature was her desk line. So I'm like, oh, I am going to keep that in handy here. I'm going to wait about a week. So about a week later, I called her at her desk line. She picked up and I said, hey, I'm actually going to be in Vancouver next week, which was a total lie, by the way. Vancouver's like a 3,000-mile, 5-hour flight from where I lived. So I'm going to be there next week. It'd be great to just talk to you about the job. She goes, well, if you're going to be here, I guess sure, you can come in and talk about it. I went in within 5 minutes. They were talking about the salary, and I got offered the job. And that was how my career went. And it's the same type of story for Deco Drive. In a nutshell, I'd sent my stuff in. They said, yeah, it looks great, but we're not flying anyone in for the job. I said, well, next week I'm going to be in Orlando. I know that's not Miami, but what if, stay with me here, what if I changed my flight, booked a rental car, and called in sick work on Monday? Would you come in? Would you see me for an audition? Yeah, I guess if you do that. So I went in, did all those things, and that's how I got the Deco Drive job.
It's you know what? First of all, I think it's that '90s kid, like big ball syndrome, where you're just like, F it, I'm gonna do what I need to do to get the job done, because fortune smiles on the bold, right? Not many people are willing to drop whatever they're doing for their career, but that also leans on the passion that you have for what you want. And I love stories like that, because much like myself, taking a risk has always yielded dividends that not taking the risk would have never have done. So that's incredible. This brand, you bet it on yourself, you invest in yourself, you created this brand. You've interviewed a lot of cool celebrities, and you have been also named Bachelor of the Freaking Year by Cosmo, which, Chris, as your friend, I think that's one of the coolest things ever, because even in 2011, you're a young dude, right? So you were even younger back then when Cosmo was like, this is the most eligible bachelor in the world, and you're a Canadian. How did that come about?
So every year, Cosmo was doing this thing. I don't think they do it anymore. Basically, every year they would pick one person from each state, and they would say, this is the most eligible bachelor in that state. So someone at my work, unbeknownst to me, submitted me for this. And I'm like, oh, well, that's such an honor. Like, thank you. It was cool to know I was submitted for it. And next thing you know, I was living in Cleveland at the time. I was Ohio's bachelor. I was like the representative for Ohio. They flew all of us to New York for like this big like magazine shoot and like this big like party. So there's a shirtless photo of me in Cosmo magazine as like the Ohio Bachelor. Then we go to New York and they do like this big showcase, and I get selected as the Bachelor of the Year. And it's a $10,000 prize that the winner got. And I donated the entire $10,000 to the Boys and Girls Club, which meant so much to me. Like to be able to donate that money to such an incredible cause just meant so much to me. So yeah, it was cool. That was 9 years ago though. And now I have a beautiful, amazing girlfriend. But that was 9 years ago to be the Bachelor of the Year. It's a wild, wild story. And here's what's funny about it. It's a photo of me on the beach wearing like jeans next to like the beach. It looks like we're in LA. It's actually Lake Erie, but don't tell anybody.
But how cool is that? Like everyone, people say, oh yeah, I was like valedictorian. I was like, I don't know. I was like the star football player. Chris CBV's like, I was featured in Cosmo in 2011. Like you can hang your hat on that. Your girl, Alana Martella. Hey, Alana. She says, oh, I love you, babe. Oh, Chris.
So sweet.
You guys are the cutest couple. How did you meet, and how do you keep love together in quarantine?
We met right here on Instagram, actually. I mean, we have a very similar background. She works as a traffic reporter in Cincinnati. I was working at the time as an entertainment reporter in Miami. We connected on Instagram, and she's not going to like me saying this, but she slid into my DMs.
Oh,
and that's where things began.
Sometimes it's like that. Listen, these are modern women. There is nothing wrong with a woman sliding into a. That's what social media is for. Can we just debunk this right now, CVV? It's like, I don't understand why people make such a, ooh, well, you have to reach out. If you want to get the D or you need something in your life, go there and get it. Go there and get it. You know what I'm saying? Like, Alana, I applaud you because Chris is hot as hell. Good for you, girl. I co-sign you. I see you. I stand with you. We see you a lot. And now look, see again, fortune favors the bold. Chris, you're in LA now. You packed it up. You got in your. You and
I have traded spots. We've traded places here.
It's crazy. You're in Los Angeles now. What's next for you, brother? Like where does Chris Van Vliet see himself? And you say, oh hey, Alana says shooters shoot their shot. Ha. You say that you're not, the sky's the limit, right? That you want, at 65 years old, you don't want to look back on your life with regret, ultimately. So, ultimately, where does CVV see himself? And I don't say in 5 years. What is that one thing that you want to do that you're like, damn, I did that?
I want to host a national show. So that's at the top of the pile. I want to host a national show, but I also want to do everything that I want to do. Like, my YouTube channel, I want to get that to 1 million subscribers. I want my podcast to continually be on that Apple Top 200 list. I've been doing some acting. I want to be in movies, some more movies. I've been in some that you've heard of, but I want to be in more movies. So I want to do it all. And I think that if somebody else is doing the thing that you want to do, that just means that you can do it. So I want to be able to go out and reach for all of the things. And I've become friendly with Tyler Perry after doing so many interviews with him. And he's just like, every time I tell him what I want to do, he's like, no, man, dream bigger. Like, dream bigger.
Yeah.
And he is such an incredible example of dreaming bigger. And he's accomplished everything that he's ever wanted to accomplish. And he's still driven to do more. So I look at people like that. And I look at people like The Rock. And I look at people like Oprah. And I'm like, it's possible for all of us. You just have to believe that it's possible.
Why are people, do you think, are afraid to dream bigger? It's interesting you bring that up, Chris, because that was something I was talking to myself about this morning, getting ready to do this show, researching you and everything I do throughout the course of the day in a time where in our industry things have slowed down, jobs have disappeared, opportunities are not around the corner, and you have to create everything. So you are met with this menace outside that's COVID that you can't see, that's killing people, that you have to protect yourself from, that has has upended life as we know it. And then also getting older, and this is the way the industry is changing. But why do you think people are afraid to dream bigger now? Like, what is the fear?
It's so easy to be safe. It's so easy to take that like decent paying job with good benefits and 3 weeks vacation. It's so easy to do that. But, and you know what that looks like. You don't know what betting on yourself looks like. And I think that
Right.
people go, well, I'd rather take this sure thing than going over here and not knowing what I'm going to get. And I think that a
Yeah.
lot of people just go, yeah, I'll take that easy thing. And that's what most people do. And I just think that that's just such an unfortunate way to live. People that live for the weekend make me sick. They make me sick. If you're living for Saturday and Sunday, what do you do with the other 5 days of the week? What a waste.
Right. I hate the weekends. I would rather be hustling Monday through Friday because at least something can happen Monday through Friday when people are actually making things happen versus on the weekend when you're just like, well, weekends suck. The weekends are like, I dread the weekends. I feel you on that. I
I
feel you.
love
I
it.
feel you. No, I can't. I can't deal with the weekends either.
If you don't like your job, go find another job. It's really as simple as that. Like, if you don't like the people that you work with, go look for something else. And it doesn't need to pay you as much. But if you don't enjoy going to work every single day, which takes up more time than anything else in your life, you will spend more time with your coworkers than you'll spend with your family or your significant other. If you don't like this thing that takes up this giant chunk of your life, you're doing things super backwards.
Right. I don't think people I would imagine fear they don't have that opportunity or the choice to go out and do something that they're passionate about, or they don't feel they are, I don't want to say entitled, but they deserve to find something that they're passionate about because we're conditioned, especially older generations, and we're conditioned that, like you said, 9 to 5. My dad had asked me about, well, what's up with your benefits, your 401k, and I understand the importance of those things, right? Because those you're going to need those down the line. But for that to be the most paramount jewel in the treasure chest of everything you
Yeah.
do, it's so indicative of how older generations think and where they place their value, which is not bad. But there is something to be said about being risky, taking a risk, and
Yeah,
really going after.
our
But
parents' generation didn't have this little computer in our pocket that linked us up to absolutely everything in the world. So I get it. If you were
yeah,
growing up, like my dad worked at the same place for 40 years. He loved his job, but he worked at the same place for 40 years. That doesn't exist anymore.
right, right. And the loyalty to employees isn't really there anymore either. More than anything, Chris, you are the owner or I don't say owner, the recipient of 4 Emmys. Four
Oh yes,
Emmys.
they're behind me here somewhere. There
Most
they are.
people get invited to the award show and don't win, or they win one. Chris Van Fleet has 4. When you see those, how do you feel? What does that symbolize?
It's cool. It's like, look, I'm a kid who grew up in a different country, right? Like I immigrated to America from Canada. So this, when you're in local news, that's the top thing you can win. So there's 2 things in my like professional career that have been like, oh man, this is like a good accomplishment. Number one, this is going to sound crazy, but number one was getting a green card. So like I could work anywhere, I have the ability to
Right,
basically live here. But that was also like, it's a big process. It's almost like a job
right.
application. You submit like, here's all the things I've done, and you submit it, and they go, yeah, like you're worthy enough to have this green card. And then number 2 was winning my first Emmy. And now I've been so fortunate, and I'm so grateful to have 4, and it just makes me want more. But it's just a cool thing to know that your work was respected and your work was, I don't know, just valued by other people. I think that's what's really cool about it.
Right. And the fact that when Emmy on a resume looks damn good. But no, that I think talking about, I have a friend who's from Canada. She's from Toronto, not Toronto, Toronto.
Toronto, yeah,
And
Toronto.
and yeah, she schooled me ad nauseum about how to say it. She's like, the T is soft, stupid. But I remember her process. No, for real, like it was a thing, Chris. Like she would not talk to me for like days on end if I said it wrong. But the process it took for her to get her green card, and then it was just she didn't know she could stay here. It's a whole thing. So I commend you for that because that in itself is nerve wracking and stressful. But for you to have accomplished all of that and to still want more, do you think you will ever be satisfied? Do you think there'll come a time when you will absolutely hang your hat up and say, you know what, it's a wrap?
No, I don't think so. And I don't think that anyone who is really driven ever does that. Like, Do you think Oprah, like, started her TV network and went, well, started the network, I think we're good now? No, it's like you're constantly striving. It's like you get to the top of the mountain and then you like the clouds like open up and you go, oh, actually the top of the mountain's there. And I feel like that's what it's like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree, 100%. But there's something exhausting about that, don't you think?
Oh, I mean, if you love it, you're just continually striving towards it. Like someone who loves working out doesn't look at a trip to the gym as like, oh man, my muscles are going to hurt tomorrow and this is going to be exhausting. They look at this as a chance to like tear down, rebuild, and get better.
Yeah. Well, with that said, self-care, right? Tear down, rebuild, and get better in this time of civil unrest, of not knowing what the hell tomorrow is going to look like. Social media is toxic as hell. How does Chris practice self-care? What do you do to unwind? And I always want to know, what is on your playlist? Please tell me it's like BTS or old school Britney or even some Mariah Carey. You will score major points, CVV, if you're jamming some Mimi. But self-care and music, what does that look like for Chris?
Well, for self-care, I think that what's wrong is always available, but so is what's right. And I think there's so many people that try to focus on all the negative things that are happening, but there's also always so many positive things that are going on in the world. And that's where I want to focus my attention, because what you focus on is how you feel, to borrow a phrase from Tony Robbins. I read every day, even if it's only like a page or two, but I read every single day. I love reading nonfiction. Podcasts are a huge part of my playlist, actually. So I listen to a lot of podcasts, but on the music playlist, I was rocking out to some Backstreet Boys the other day. Love me some Backstreet Boys.
I'm not mad at that. I co-sign that.
But I am a huge fan of like early 2000s pop punk. So we're talking Blink-182, Sum 41, Yellow Card, Census Fail, Hawthorne Heights, All American Rejects, The Dangerous Summer. Like the list can go on and on and on and on. As you can tell, that's my jam.
That's your jam. We people who are not of the Caucasian persuasion call that white boy rock. And but here's the thing. Confession, Chris. Me too. Seriously.
Hey!
And like me too. So it's cool. But my thing was more of the maudlin sounds of like the Fray, three doors down, Third Eye Blind,
Okay.
that kind. But
so you're like the alternative white boy.
right? Yeah, like Doc Martens, a little flannel, maybe some Tommy Cologne, Hating My Life, with the sprinkle of Avril Lavigne first album, when she was really angsty, very angsty,
Yeah.
but that's when music was incredible. These kids just don't know. The VMAs were this weekend. And I was watching them, and Chris, remember when the VMAs were a moment when was the performances, and it was just I would ditch school just to watch the pre-show because it was live on the East Coast, and so we were 2 hours behind in Albuquerque. So I was in school and it was on, and I watched this weekend, and of course with times change, technology, it's like a lot better, but there was some magic missing. Magic is missing in music, I think. Am I wrong?
A lot of it definitely sounds the same. Like Elena and I put on Spotify's like top 100, and we just kind of like skipping through song to song to song, and I'm like, a lot of these sound really similar, and that's okay. Like they're dialing into what works, but you and I are going down this very this is a dangerous place where it's going to sound like we're going to sound like two old men being like, "It was better
Boomers.
back in my day."
Okay, boomer. But it was though. But I mean, it was. I'm sorry. I don't care if that dates us. It was. I'm okay with it because the truth is the truth. There's nothing wrong with the truth. So, look, they can't handle the truth. That's the problem. They cannot handle the truth. You have interviewed, like I said, some really, really incredible people. Looking back on all the interviews, Chris, that you've done, and I've watched a lot of them, man. And you have such a nice ease about shit. You make people feel comfortable. What is that one interview that you look back on and you're like, oh my gosh, how did this even happen? Thank you, interview gods. Like, this goes down. This should be in the Guinness Book of World Records. This should be like etched in stone in Washington. What is that interview?
For me, that's The Rock. So being a huge wrestling fan growing up, I loved The Rock in the late 90s. I was walking down my high school halls, like raising the people's eyebrow. asking people questions just so I could answer with, "It doesn't matter what you think," which was The Rock's big catchphrase. So when I got to interview The Rock for the first time, fast forward from there, like 12 years later, that was it for me. And everyone always says you shouldn't meet your heroes, but if your hero happens to be Dwayne Johnson, you should 1000% meet your hero. He's kind and he's charismatic and he's funny, and he has this star quality about him where he makes the moment about you. Even though he is arguably the most famous person in the world, he's self-aware enough to know that this moment's important for you. And he makes the moment important. He turns the moment around and makes it great for you. So definitely Rock.
It's interesting. You've never hear anything bad about The Rock. Like Ellen, all this drama just came out about Ellen, right? And not shocked. However, all this drama came out about Ellen, and it's like, but The Rock, no one has anything mean to say about The Rock. If The Rock ended up being a douchebag, how depressed would you be?
I feel like if The Rock was a douchebag, he is the greatest actor to ever act, because every time I've met him, he's been so like charming and kind and humble. So if The Rock's a douche, he's the best actor to ever live.
Yeah, he's Academy Award winning.
Yeah, he should have all the Oscars.
The CHRIS Van VLIET Show, YouTube, huge platform, lots of videos, great interviews, great content. You keep it going, the podcast. What does the future hold for your brand? What's on the horizon? Where are we evolving the CHRIS Van VLIET brand to?
I love that you keep referring to me as a brand. I've never really thought about it this way.
Well, you are. I mean, like if you think about, and Chris, I mean, like in all actuality, you are. Just if you look at, I mean, you've branded yourself, and we have 359 people watching right now. We have a constant stream of people celebrating you and saying that you give them confidence. Bobby Garrett 38 says you give me confidence. People have been singing your praises this whole time. You are a brand. People look to you. When I posted you were coming on Jason Unleashed, people slid into my DMs were like, "Oh my gosh, I love him." Also, people that I know that I didn't know were fans of wrestling were like, "Oh my gosh, she's going to be on. I'm definitely watching." So you've been able to capture audiences, Chris, with what you do, and there definitely is a brand there. So where do you see that going?
Wow. Well, that's amazing to hear. And I'm super grateful that people, even want to listen to us hang out, because don't tell anyone, you and I would do this for free with nobody.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I think for me, it's just like continue to drive for more. My motto in life is that I want more out of every situation and more out of every relationship that I have. So more, which drove me here to Los Angeles, literally drove me here, in my car. So it's about more. It's about building the current relationships that I have, both personally and business-wise, and then just striving for more from that. So national TV show, here I come. Million subscribers on YouTube, here I come.
Right. You manifested it here on Jason Unleashed. I'm witness to it, and it's definitely going to happen for you. When you decided to come to LA, Chris, when you said Miami 305-786, whatever area code we're in here, when you decided to
leave, I was in the 954.
Okay, another one. There's like 9, and one down Biscayne Boulevard, there's like 9 zip codes. But what was that deciding factor to leave Miami, a place that has embraced you and has been home to you and so open to go to Hollywood?
I loved my job in Miami, and being able to be on Deco Drive for 5 years was nothing short of a dream come true. Like, it's such a legendary show, as you mentioned earlier. For a local entertainment show to be on TV for, it's almost 25 years now. That is unheard of. So to be one of the very few people to ever sit at that legendary anchor desk and be a part of Deco Drive, I mean, that meant so much to me. But I had an opportunity with All Elite Wrestling to be part of their weekly show on Dynamite, a weekly show on TNT called Dynamite. And I wasn't able to do both. So I kind of had to like dig deep and think to myself, like, what did I A, move to America for? And what did I B, move to Miami for? And the answer for both was to do more. And so this opportunity came around, and I was like, this is something that I can't turn down. And I haven't been on TNT in a few months because of everything that's going on in the world, but it was such an amazing opportunity. And it kind of made me realize that, like, I have the ability to do a lot of stuff on my own, like, if I just kind of put the time into it.
Yeah. That's the silver lining of COVID that I think is so valuable and precious, right? Because as you and I love how you illustrated so beautifully the choice you make and what you focus on, right? If you choose to always see, I actually talked to my husband about this. I had an argument with him about this morning because I was like complaining about how bored I am and I want to, be back behind the desk on television, all these things that are just, it's like this diarrhea of like just irritation. And he's like, well, you can focus on that, or you can focus on what you can control. And I think with COVID, people have been able to sit back and say, okay, we have what we're doing now. We have technology. We have an audience. We have just the time to really get creative and put our best foot forward and do the work to have an awesome product. So at the end of the day, that's what you want. That's a silver lining of COVID, right? That's like the beauty, if you will, by focusing on the positive. So I think LA is going to be really good to you because you're so fucking talented. Two, even though I adore you, I still can't get back into wrestling. I'm sorry. I just can't do it.
Fair enough.
I can't do it. I can't do it. And when someone comes up to Chris and says, Chris, what advice could you give me? I'm trying to start in news. I'm trying to start in entertainment. I'm trying to start a business. I'm trying to build a brand. What advice do you give them? How do you be an advocate? How do you give back to those people who come and need something from you?
I would say find somebody who's doing the thing that you want to do, and then reverse engineer where they are to where you are. And that'll tell you all the steps that you need to take to get to where they're at. So if they're at step 14 and you are at step 1, well, figure out what step 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 all the way up is. We live in a world now where anything is possible because of this little computer that sits in our pocket. This amazing thing called the internet allows us to do anything that we want. I mean, you and I wouldn't be able to do this right now if this was 5 years ago, if this was 3 years ago. If you wanted to go live 5 years ago, you had to own a TV station. And then you had to employ a bunch of people to work in that TV station. So with all that said, by the way, congrats to you on everything that you built. You want to throw the word brand around. How about the Jason Carter brand? Like, you are crushing it.
Thank you, brother. Hey.
And I know that maybe right now, you're in a bit of a transition period, moving to a new city, moving into a new place, but it's all waiting for you on the other side, man.
I appreciate that, man. From your mouth to God's ears, Chris Van Vliet, 4-time Emmy award-winning badass live.
Wow.
Hey, man, hey, I'm throwing it at you. Boom, boom, boom. DDT. Boom. Wait, isn't DDT? Yeah, but wait, who was that? Which wrestling superstar was that?
The DDT?
Yeah.
That was Jake the Snake Roberts.
Boom! I knew it. And didn't one of them become like the governor of Jesse the Body Ventura, Minnesota?
Look at you with your wrestling knowledge. Wow.
Dude, that's all I know. Don't be too impressed. That was just some like periphery knowledge. Man, it's been awesome talking to you, buddy. I can't wait to see you back in LA, and I cannot wait to see all the wonderful things you're doing. Alana, I know she's still watching. Hi, hello.
Hi.
And Chris, I'll talk to you soon, bro. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, brother. Be well.
Absolutely. Thanks for stopping by.